century since we made this really fateful decision to take addicts and punish them and make them suffer because we believe that will deter them, give them an incentive to stop. And a few years ago, I was looking at some of the addicts in my life and my life, trying to figure out if there was some way to help them. And I realised there were loads of incredibly basic questions I just didn't know the answer to. Like, what really causes addiction? Why do we carry on with this approach that doesn't seem to be working? And is there a better way out there that we can try instead? So I read loads of stuff about it, and I couldn't really find the answers I was looking for. So I thought, okay, I'll go and speak to different people around the world who live this and study this and talk to them and see if I can and I ended up, I didn't realise I ended up going to 3,000 miles. I ended up going to see loads of people for that. Transgender crack dealer in Brownsville, Brooklyn, a scientist who spent a lot of time feeding hallucinogens to monkeys to see if they like them. It turns out they do, but only in very specific circumstances. So the only countries ever to criminalise all drugs, from cannabis to crack, Portugal. And the thing I realised that really blew my mind is almost everything we think we know about addiction is wrong. And if we start to absorb the new evidence about addiction, I think we're going to have to change a lot more than our drugs. But let's start with what we think we know, what I thought I know, right? Think about this middle row here, right? Imagine if all of you, 20 days now, went off and used heroin 3 times a day. Some of you can look at one of these another prospect. Don't worry, it's not funny. Imagine you did that, right? What would happen? Now, we have a story about what would happen if we control for a century. We think, because there are chemicals of heroin, as you took it for a while, the body would become dependent on those drugs, start to physically need them, and at the end of those 20 days, you'd all be heroin addicts, right? That's what I thought. First thing that alerted me to the fact something not right with this story. So just explain to me, if I step out in this pencil today and I get hit by a car and I break my hip, I'll be taken to hospital and I'll be given loads of diamorphine. Diamorphine is heroin. It's actually much better heroin than you're going to buy on the street. Because the stuff you buy from a drug dealer is contaminated with actually very little heroin. Whereas the stuff you get from the doctor is medically pure. And you'll be given it for quite a long period of time. There are loads of people in this room who may not realise that you've taken quite a lot of heroin, right? And anyone watching this anywhere in the world has been. And if what we believe about addiction is right, those people are exposed to all those chemical hurdles. What should happen? They should become addicts. This has been studied really carefully. It doesn't happen. You would have noticed that your grandmother had a hip replacement. She didn't come out as a junkie. And when I learned this, it just seemed so weird to me, so contrary to everything I've been told, I thought I knew. I just thought it would be right. Until I went and met man called Bruce Alexander, professor of psychology at Stanford, who carried out incredible experiments that I think really helped us understand addiction. Let's wait for Alexander to stop. The idea of addiction we've all got in our heads, that story, comes partly from experience of experiments done earlier in the 20th century. They're really simple experiments. You do them tonight when you go home, you know, you get a rat and you put it in a cage, and you do it 2 more things. One is just water, and the other is water lets you do a heroin in the cage. If you do that, the rat will almost always be going to run in the surface, and almost always kill itself quite quickly. So there you go, right? That's how simple it works. And your son, Professor Alexander, comes along and looks at the experiment, and he notices something. Can I ask? We're putting the rat in an empty cage. It's got nothing to do with getting this drug. Let's try something different. So Professor Alexander built a cage called Rat Farm, which is basically a tent for rats, right? They've got loads of cheese, they've got loads of coloured balls, they've got loads of panels. Crucially, they've got loads of friends that can have loads of days. And they've got open water bottles. With all just stop. Now, to believe the story about chemical hooks, that makes absolutely no sense. Professor Alexander guesses there might be a different story about addiction. What if addiction isn't about chemical hooks? What if addiction is about change? What if addiction is an adaptation to your environment? Looking at this, there was a nose mechanism, heroin and heroin. But maybe we shouldn't call it addiction. Maybe we should call it bonding. Human beings have a natural and innate need to bond. And when we're happy and healthy, we'll bond and connect with each other. But if you can't do that, because you're traumatized or isolated or beaten down by life, you will bond with something that will be something. Now that might be gambling, that might be pornography, that might be cocaine, that might be cannabis. You will bond and connect with something. That's our nature. That's what we want as human beings. And I think, at first I found this quite a difficult thing to get my head around. But one way I help you think about it, I can see, I've got over by my seat there, a bottle of water, right? I can see lots of you, and lots of you have bottles of water, right? You get drunk or totally legal, all those bottles of water could be bottles of vodka, right? We could also get drunk like that, but we're not, right? Now, because you've been able to afford the approximately £1 billion cost of getting the petrol, I'm guessing you guys could afford to be drinking vodka for the next 6 months. You wouldn't end up like this. You're not going to do that. And the reason you're not going to do that is not because anyone stops you. It's because you've got bond connection you want to connect for. You've got work with us, you've got talk with us, you've got healthy relationships. And the core part of addiction, I think, the big end of the future is about not being able to bear present in your life. Now, we have really significant implications. Most of the implications of the war on drugs, right? In Arizona, I went out with a group of women who were meant to wear t-shirts saying, I was a drug addict, go out on chain gangs and hit bread while members of the public security. And when those women get out of prison, they're going to have criminal records and they'll never work for the. Now that's a very extreme example of the case of chain gangs, but actually almost everywhere in the world is addicts to some degree like that. Punish them, shame them, give them criminal records, put barriers between them and them. There was a doctor in Canada, Dr. Gabriel Martin, who made man in prison. He wanted to design a system to make it work. We designed that. Now, there's a place that decided to do the exact opposite, and I went there to see how it worked. In the year 2000, Portugal had one of the worst drug laws in Europe. 1% of the population was heroin, which is kind of mind-blowing. And every year, they tried to American way laws. They punished people, stigmatized them, shamed them more. And every year, the problem was worse. So one day, the Prime Minister, legal politicians got together, basically said, look, you can't go on in a country where everyone people becoming heroin addicts. Let's set up a panel of scientists and doctors to figure out the genuine source of it. This is a panel led by an amazing man called Dr. Bao Gulao to look at all this new evidence. And they came back and they said, decriminalise all drugs, from cannabis to crack. But, and this is the crucial next step, take all the money we used to spend on cutting addicts off, on disconnecting them, and spend it instead on reconnecting them with the society. And that's not, essentially, that's not really what we think of. What they did wasn't really what we think of as drug treatment in the United States and Britain. So they do residential rehab, they do psychological therapy that does have some value. But the biggest thing they did was the complete opposite of what we do. A massive program of job creation for addicts and micro loans for addicts to set up small businesses. So say you used to be a mechanic. When you're ready, they go to a garage and they'll say, if you employ this guy for a year, we'll pay half his wages. The goal was to make sure that every addict in Portugal had something to get out of bed for in the morning. And when I went and met the addicts in Portugal, it was fascinating. What they said is, as they rediscovered purpose, they rediscovered bonds and relationships with the wider society. It'll be 15 years this year since that experiment began, and the results are in. Injecting drug use is down in Portugal, according to the British Journal of Criminology, by 50%, 50%. Overdose is massively down, HIV is massively down among addicts, addiction in every study is significantly down. One of the ways you know it's worked so well is that almost nobody in Portugal wants to go back to the old system. Now that's the kind of political implications. I actually think there's a layer of implications to all this research below that. You know, we live in a culture where people feel really increasingly vulnerable to all sorts of addictions, whether it's to their smartphones, or to shopping, or to eating. You know, before these talks began, you guys know this, that we were told we weren't allowed to have our smartphones on. And I have to say, a lot of you
looked an awful lot like addicts who were being told their dealer was going to be unavailable for the next couple of hours. And a lot of us feel like that. And it might sound weird to say, oh, I've been talking about how disconnection is a major driver of addiction. It's weird to say it's growing because you think, well, we're the most connected society there's ever been, surely. But I increasingly began to think that the connections we have, we think we have, are like a kind of parody of human connection. If you have a crisis in your life, you'll notice something. It won't be your Twitter followers who come to sit with you. It won't be your Facebook friends who help you turn it around. It'll be your flesh and blood friends who you have deep and nuanced and textured face-to-face relationships with. And I think there's a study I learned about from Bill McKibben, the environmental writer, I think tells us a lot about this. It looked at the number of close friends the average American believes they can call on in a crisis. That number has been declining steadily since the 1950s. The amount of floor space an individual has in their home has been steadily increasing. And I think that's like a metaphor for the choice we've made as a culture, right? We've traded floor space for friends, we've traded stuff for connections, and the result is that we are one of the loneliest societies there has ever been. And yet Bruce Alexander, the guy who did the Rat Park experiment, says, we talk all the time in addiction about individual recovery. And it's right to talk about that. But we need to talk much more about social recovery. Something's gone wrong with us, not just as individuals, but as a group. And we've created a society where, for a lot of us, life looks a whole lot more like that isolated cage and a whole lot less like Rat Park. But if I'm honest, this isn't why I went into it, right? I didn't go in to discover the political stuff, the social stuff. I wanted to know how to help the people I love. And when I came back from this long journey and I'd learned all this, I looked at the addicts in my life, and if you're really candid, it's hard loving an addict, and there's going to be lots of people who know in this room you are angry a lot of the time. And I think one of the reasons why this debate is so charged is because it runs through the heart of each of us, right? Everyone has a bit of them that looks at an addict and thinks, I wish someone would just stop you. And the kind of script we're told for how to deal with the addicts in our lives is typified by, I think, by the reality show Intervention. If you guys haven't seen it, I think everything in our lives is typified by reality TV, but that's another TED Talk. If you've never seen the show Intervention, it's a pretty simple premise. Get an addict, all the people in their life, gather them together, and say, if you don't shape up, they confront them with what they're doing, and they say, if you don't shape up, we're going to cut you off, right? So what they do is they take the connection to the addict, and they threaten it. They make it contingent on the addict behaving the way they want. And I began to see why that approach doesn't work. And I began to think that almost that's like the importing of the logic of the drug war into our private lives. So I was thinking, well, how can I be Portuguese, right? And what I try to do now, and I can't tell you I do it consistently, and I can't tell you it's easy, is to say to the addicts in my life that I want to deepen the connection with them, to say to them, I love you whether you're using or you're not. I love you whatever state you're in, and if you need me, I'll come and sit with you, because I love you and I don't want you to be alone or to feel alone. And I think the core of that message, you're not alone, we love you, has to be at every level of how we respond to addicts, socially, politically, and individually. For 100 years now, we've been singing war songs about addicts. I think all along we should have been singing love songs to them, because the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. Thank you.
Okay, for those of you that couldn't hear the beginning of that video, I'm sorry, we've had some technical difficulties. But he spoke of an experiment done by Mr. Alexander where they put a rat in a cage with essentially crack water and then some regular water. And that rat chose the crack water on a regular basis. He did another experiment where he put a rat in a rat park with other rats. Those rats went to the regular water instead of the crack water. So he was showing how we choose drugs and addiction, drinking, as a reaction to our environment. Which brings me to talk about life balances and stressors. Life is all about balance. A lot of you are getting ready to go on a deployment. So it's all about balancing your home life with how you're getting ready for your deployment. And it is stressful. Can anybody tell me things that stress them out? Just shout out.
My wife.
your wife, relationships, right? Maybe your mom. Say again? Society, sure. Anything else? Your soldiers. I'll tell you, Thursday afternoon I was sitting in my office and holy cow, you guys. I hear people running up and down the hallways with so much to do in your 4-day weekend, or 4-day work week, sorry. And I can't even imagine what you're going through right now. You are preparing for a deployment. These briefings are stressful. Waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning is stressful. Not getting to enjoy your Saturday and Sunday is stressful. For me, my kids are stressful. I had to tote them to my mother's house this morning. We only had 3 meltdowns. It was awesome. That's a good morning for me. Slide, please. Our pets are stressful. We have a Jack Russell Terrier who ate an entire pizza the other day whenever it was left out on the table. That was stressful for me. Work, substance use can be stressful. It can also be a relief. Sometimes we turn to a glass of wine in the evenings, a beer, to kind of unwind, especially during the weekend. Let's see, our health could be stressful. Finances, life. How do we balance this stress? Any ideas? They're on the board. Exercise. What else? Say again? Maybe watching a movie? Who plays video games? I don't. Good for you. Maybe your kids help you balance stress. Maybe doing something, seeing their successes. Maybe seeing your soldiers' successes helps balance stress. So what's important to remember whenever we're trying to balance our stressful lives is to avoid thinking traps. Avoid getting in this mindset that everything is so terrible that we can't move on. You have to maintain perspective. Keep your goals in mind. Remember what you're working towards. Manage your energy. Don't devote all your energy to these horrible things that are happening to you, such as work or not having money at the end of the week. And build up your confidence. Know that you can do it. You can get past this. It's just one more step. Slide. Okay. And this is what I'm here for. Big Army has passed down some studies to maintain low-risk guidelines. This is something that we like to teach you guys just to keep in the back of your mind. 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, it's best to choose not to drink, especially if you're pregnant. No illegal drugs, to include non-prescription drugs, overuse of prescription drugs, sharing prescription drugs, and marijuana. No marijuana. 1, it's your 1 standard drink per hour. 2 standard drinks per day. And 3 standard drinks on any given day for special events. 0, 1, 2, 3. Slide. What is a standard drink? 12 ounces of 5% alcohol beer, 5 ounces of wine, 1.5 ounces of liquor. Alaska is getting known for our microbreweries. Yeah. I'll tell you, probably about 90% of the time, those beers at those microbreweries are greater than 5% alcohol. Yeah. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're counting your drinks for the evening, because 1 beer at a microbrewery is probably 2 standard drinks. Something to keep in the back of your mind. If you exceed these 0, 1, 2, 3 guidelines, does that make you an alcoholic? Negative. It does not. We are very forgiving people. Sometimes we do need to relax. However, this is a good idea to keep in the back of your head just to monitor yourself. So when you see that you do develop a problem with drinking, are you following these 0, 1, 2, 3 guidelines to stay safe, to stay at low risk? You guys are going on a deployment. I don't know if it's a high-risk deployment. Maybe it is. I know Sergeant Chestnut likes to jump out of planes. That's pretty high risk. Let's not drink and do high-risk activities and low-risk drinking. Slide. All right, here's another breakdown of your standard drink size. Does anybody, have you ever been to Pizza Man in Eagle River? By a show of hands? Schooner, I heard somebody say it. How many drinks are in a schooner? standard drinks? Is it 3? 2? It's quite a few. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's essentially a fishbowl with a stem full of beer. It's not a standard drink size. Slide. And go ahead, skip this one. One more. One more. Thank you. Okay, what are the outcomes of high-risk drinking? So we just went over the low-risk guidelines, and now we're high-risk. What if we are high-risk? What happens to your health? What organ? Oh, okay, degrade. What organ in your body deteriorates if you drink too much? Your liver, cirrhosis of the liver. Alcohol poisoning, that's a big thing among our younger soldiers. Financial difficulties, legal troubles, relationship problems, unplanned life changes. These are just the results of drinking and letting it get out of control. I think most of you can relate to this. Things happen whenever you drink that ultimately you can't control. So our goal here is to persuade you to avoid these things. Slide. I should have had you guess first. Cost of a DUI is roughly $20,000. Like I said, I've been working in this industry for about 5 years. I have seen people go through DUIs, seen the effects of what happens post-DUI between the legal fees and the other lawyer fees, the insurance for your car, and the follow-up with probably not being able to get a job afterwards. It's just not worth it. My best experience taking an Uber was in Seattle, Washington. Alaska has Uber, it's pretty funny. We were at a red light and our Uber driver pulled out a ukulele and started playing it to us. Call an Uber, call a cab. Jaybird offers JBAD, which I think is a super cool resource for you guys, free ride home. It's pretty neat. Next slide. And now on to drugs. Slide. Is marijuana legal in the National Guard? No. Even though it's legal in the state of Alaska, it is not legal for soldiers. And this is hard because we have a dispensary literally on every corner. I want to tell you some really nerve-wracking news. 100% of our illicit positives for UAs this year, FY19, comes from your unit. 100%. And they are all positive for THC. Let that sink in for a second. 100% from this room. Next slide, please. Our 2-star General Hummel put out a memo in December of 16 stating that it is, yes sir?
I got a question. What about for the technicians that are Title V and that are give up their membership?
I'll have to get back to you on that one. Okay.
Hey guys, Sergeant Mez, the drug testing coordinator. What was the question?
So if you're Title V and you're going to give up your membership in the National Guard, can you smoke marijuana?
If you are no longer a member of the Alaska Army National Guard, can you use marijuana as just a civilian on Title V?
Yes.
That's a GS question for whoever is responsible for running those state or federal employees. They're no longer part of the Guard, so our regulation does not apply to them.
Yes, sir.
What about CBD oil?
CBD oil is not allowed. Okay. 2-star General Hummel states in her memo, you may not attend hemp marijuana events. You cannot partake, eat, consume, sell, distribute, or persuade anybody else to do so as a member of the National Guard. Slide. Steroids are not allowed in the National Guard. All right, our USAREC General said the same thing. A memo coming out in August 2016, essentially the same thing. Do not attend fairs, hemp fests, anything like that. Girdwood puts on a hemp festival every year. A couple years ago, they offered a discount to soldiers for attending. Not allowed. Somebody didn't get the memo. Now you know marijuana is not allowed in the National Guard. It's like, can you tell the difference? They look super tasty, right? All right, so our marijuana growers are getting really good at their jobs. It's very hard to tell what has marijuana in it. So as a soldier, knowing what you are and are not allowed to do, I would caution you to read your labels. If something is not labeled, don't eat it, don't drink it, just to be safe. Like, what do you do if you have eaten a weed brownie and you didn't know it? Throw up. I don't think that's gonna work. We want you to call your chain of command while you're still high. That's what you're gonna do. Don't wait till you come down, because then it sounds like you did it on purpose. We have a policy that came down. Again, it's an AR 600-85, that is our substance abuse regulation, kind of outlining our program. It is a limited use policy. If you self-refer, and that's what this policy is meant to do, is encourage self-referral. I have more of these pamphlets in the back on your, well, it was a coffee table, you guys drank it all, but it's back there. Kind of outlining the details of that policy, stating that if you come forward and you say that you have a drinking problem, you have done marijuana, you have done drugs, if you come forward, what it does is it will protect your characterization of discharge. I cannot guarantee you will not get discharged even if you come forward, but it could save you from getting a dishonorable discharge. If you have more questions, again, that pamphlet has scenarios, so kind of see, if your soldiers would fall under that category. But again, pay attention to what you're eating. I watched a first sergeant the other day. His soldiers were playing a joke on him and opened his soda while he was away from the table. He came back and he threw it away because he was worried that somebody might have put something in it. And I might have ruined all of your potlucks for the rest of the year. I am so sorry. Slide. Okay, FY18, Alaska Army National Guard produced 22 illicit positives. FY18, 18 of those were THC. 81%. Does this have any correlation with the marijuana dispensaries? I could not tell you. Maybe people are just turning to marijuana because it's easier to use. However, it's high. So take note that it's not allowed. Slide. All right. And here is a list of your substance abuse program team. Larry Ryan is our ADCO, our Alcohol Drug Control Officer. He is my boss. He's a really tall man, so if you see him, you can't miss him. My name again is Renee Thiel. I'm your prevention coordinator. Sergeant First Class Oliver Meza. One more thing to you guys. He is part of your infantry unit. He has assured me that he will be doing UAs throughout your deployment. And Sergeant Dalabama will be taking over for him here on the ground. So those of you staying back and supporting us here in Alaska, you will be tested as well, just as you would normally. So stick that in the back of your minds as well. And then Mr. Sean Rawl is our Suicide Prevention Program Manager. He'll be up to talk next. But before I give him the floor, I want you guys to know that we are not your enemy. We're here to help you. We're not the bad guys. If you have an issue, let us know. We'd like to give you some resources. We don't want to get you in trouble. But we're here for you if you guys need any help. Thank you.